The 7th of October was a date, that they still have not been able to, and there's an investigation going on, and I've already heard from some of the soldiers that were told to stand down and the exact hours. So something bad happened, and it was an inside thing. I have personally walked that border. I have been down at those areas, and I know the details of how the Israelis, one of the most secure borders in the world, how they do their operations. So I know that. So something broke down, and it wasn't because of mistakes.
Today, former US National Security Advisor Mike Flynn stunned Steve Bannon with the statement that you just heard him make in regard to October 7th, the day that Hamas committed atrocities against the Israeli people, giving the Israeli government the excuse that it's always wanted to essentially brutalize, terrorize the Palestinian people in Gaza. They also did so in the West Bank, even though the West Bank has nothing to do with October 7th. And now they're going to annex the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Now, reporting from The Dissident, by the way, also sheds light on some new testimony from an IDF soldier who suggests that Israel may have intentionally allowed the October 7th attack to happen. This is an IDF soldier. This is reported by Israel's Channel 7 News and The Dissident. Now, before we get to the latest reporting on this, let me just remind you all that dating all the way back to November 30th of 2023, so almost 2 months after the October 7th attacks, there was a piece written in the New York Times that definitely grabbed our attention. We covered it. The piece was titled, "Israel Knew Hamas's Attack Plan More Than a Year Ago." Again, this was published in 2023, meaning they knew a year prior to the actual attack. A blueprint reviewed by the Times laid out the attack in detail. Israeli officials dismissed it as aspirational and ignored specific warnings. Now, this would also be a good time to remind you all that Benjamin Netanyahu, the current prime minister of Israel, is the one who facilitated the funding of Hamas. That can't be repeated enough, but somehow it never gets talked about in the US media. Now, back to that New York Times piece, it indicated that Israeli officials had obtained the detailed Hamas battle plan for October 7th, a year prior to the attack happening. The translated document, which was reviewed by the New York Times, did not set a date for the attack, but described a methodical assault designed to overwhelm the fortifications around the Gaza Strip, take over Israeli cities, and storm key military bases, including a division headquarters. Hamas followed the blueprint with shocking precision. The document called for a barrage of rockets at the outset of the attack, drones to knock out these security cameras, and automated machine guns along the border, and gunmen to pour into Israel en masse in paragliders, on motorcycles, and on foot, all of which happened on October 7th. Again, the blueprint was discovered and was available for the Israeli authorities to view and to prepare for, but they didn't. More. The document circulated widely among Israeli military and intelligence leaders, but experts determined that an attack on that scale and ambition was beyond Hamas's capabilities, according to documents and officials. Now, at the time that we covered this reporting from the Times and this huge bombshell report, really, it hadn't occurred to me at that moment that we're talking about Israel here. The perpetual victims, the most neurotic and paranoid people on the planet. They think everyone hates them. They think everyone's a terrorist. So you're telling me that the Israeli government and military had the blueprint for Hamas's October 7th attack a year in advance and didn't do anything to prepare for it? Really? Really? Interesting. Okay. And then in a story that was reported by Israeli paper Haaretz in June of 2024, meaning last year, there was another piece of evidence that Israel knew about the attack before it happened. Report, new evidence reveals IDF had detailed prior knowledge of Hamas plan to raid Israel. A never-before-seen IDF document surfaces startling new details of Hamas's operational plans to invade Israel. The report outlines Hamas orders to take between 200 and 250 Israeli hostages. Okay. Wow. So weeks prior to the attack, the IDF had access to additional evidence that Hamas was planning this attack. Okay. So the report on this new document that the IDF obtained said the following. So this newly surfaced document reveals that Israeli Defense Forces and Israeli intelligence systems had detailed knowledge of Hamas's plan to raid Israel, including the number of hostages to be taken and specific instructions for their treatment while in captivity. The document, which is based on information from military intelligence's 8200 unit, began circulating on September 19th, less than 3 weeks before the October 7th massacre. Its contents were brought to the attention of at least some senior intelligence officials, but apparently ignored. Why were they ignored? Why were they ignored? Is anyone asking these questions? I'm curious why all of these powerful people in the Israeli military and the Israeli government had all these warnings, had the battle plan a year in advance, had another document detailing what was gonna happen weeks in advance, and they didn't prepare for it? That's strange, isn't it? Okay, well, there's more, all right? So the raid targets described in the document, which include IDF command and control headquarters, base synagogues, squadron headquarters, communications headquarters, and soldiers' quarters, closely mirrored the locations hit by Hamas forces during the early morning hours of October 7th. And again, that document detailed how many hostages Hamas was planning to take, to kidnap, to hold in captivity in the Gaza Strip, between 200 to 250 hostages, and that was the number that they eventually kidnapped. So now we have this damning testimony from an IDF soldier who was on duty on October 7th. And this testimony is reported on in Channel 7 in Israel. So Israeli media to some extent is covering this. No one in the US seems to have any interest in covering it. The Dissident has reported on it, but that hasn't gotten much attention. This was reported days ago. Luckily, I found this report and felt that it was important to share with you all. So Shalom Shidrit, who is a Golani fighter who took part in the battles on October 7th, suggests that Israel intentionally allowed the attack to happen. Well, that's a big accusation. So the force at the Pega post, where this IDF soldier was stationed, was supposed to protect the kibbutz Be'eri, which was one of the targets of the Hamas terrorists who showed up and killed innocent people. Reporting on the testimony, Israel's Channel 7 reported that at 5:20 a.m. on October 7th, this IDF soldier said, "We were playing on the phone and suddenly a strange message came up from my deputy commander." And what he says on the radio is something like this, quote, "I don't know why, but an order was given that there would be no patrols in the Gaza fence until 9 a.m. Okay, it gets even stranger. He says, and sure enough, this is a direct quote from the IDF soldier, and he's sharing his identity. There's his name right there. And sure enough, an hour later at 6:30, suddenly sirens. Israel's Channel 7 also reported that every morning the platoon raises alert, and in his estimation, there are no mornings in which there are no patrols on the Gaza fence because you are in an operational battalion, and that is part of the matter. So it was unusual to not have IDF soldiers guarding that area. Every day there are IDF soldiers guarding that area, but that morning they were basically told, don't do that. They got that strange message. Why? And why is this being reported for the first time now? I mean, it's absurd. So Channel 7 asked this IDF soldier why so many IDF officials at posts near the Gaza border were sleeping when October 7th happened, to which the IDF soldier responds, "I don't know how to answer it that way. In our mortar platoon, we were on alert at dawn and we woke up. It is possible that the patrol wards told them not to get up or wake up. I don't know what to say." He also addressed the intel that was ignored, saying that it's not a failure on the part of the fighters on the ground, but on the part of the high levels in the army, of people who went down to Eilat, even though we informed them a week in advance that there was intelligence information. What, our lives are not worth it? No, Shalom, your life isn't worth it, clearly. You think Netanyahu cares about your life? You think Netanyahu and this Israeli government cares about the hostages right now? You think the aerial bombardments, the 3-month blockade on humanitarian aid wasn't going to impact the hostages that the Israeli government is pretending to care about? They knew, they don't care. How many of those hostages were actually killed by Israel's military activity? We know at least 3 of them were shot to death by IDF soldiers. You think your government cares about you? How many IDF soldiers have died in this genocide that they're carrying out? Based on an attack that happened that could have been prevented, but for some reason, it seems like the Israeli government didn't want to prevent those atrocities from being committed in Israel. Seems like they saw a possible benefit, a political benefit to these atrocities being committed against the Israeli people. But hey, at least Shalom's asking the right questions. Maybe dig a little deeper, get to know your government, get to know what it's really about and what their real goals are. Also worth emphasizing that Jeremy Scahill's reporting about what Netanyahu was up to weeks prior to the October 7th attack might shed some light on what the reality is of this entire situation. Just 2 weeks before the October 7th attacks, the Israeli leader delivered a speech at the UN General Assembly in New York, brandishing a map of what he promised could be the new Middle East. It depicted a state of Israel that stretched continuously from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Gaza and the West Bank, as Palestinian lands, were erased. He was just giving us a little sneak peek, a little preview at what was to come. Who cares if innocent Israeli civilians die in the process? Who cares if IDF soldiers are forced to go carry out a genocide and slaughter countless women, children, elderly people, non-combatants? Hey, we get to have our land, the Greater Israel Project. That's what matters the most. You think they care about the hostages? Netanyahu has demonstrated over and over again that he cares about nothing but himself and conquest. And unfortunately, he is getting what he wants because our government and our government officials, including our president, don't serve us, the American people. They don't do what's right on behalf of the international community. They serve Netanyahu and the Israeli government like the dogs that they are. It's time to ask some serious questions. For the Israeli people, why is your prime minister, or why did your prime minister facilitate the funding of Hamas? Why are you allowing him to remain in power? And do you really think he cares about the hostages? Because his actions prove otherwise.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.